I'm sorry if you're wondering why I look like it's saying battery is low. All of a sudden I had this sound in my ear about low battery, and I was like, that is so weird. Sorry about the little technical hiccup before. I do not know why there was not any sound, but I figured I would start the stream again. I almost was just like, fuck it, I'm gonna go back and take a nap. I would, and I don't like the way the little mic, it's like, hi Mike, there's a little bit of it showing in the screen. It doesn't rain much in Colorado, and it was pouring down rain, and I was completely like asleep napping because I love rain. And then time came for the show, and I was like, oh, but it's scheduled, so I have to do it. But figured I needed to. Definitely needed to. It's a subject that's been needing addressing, and why the hell not? You know, need to get it over with. But I'm going to keep having this talking in my ear, and my hair is like kind of icky. Let me turn this thing off because it's going to keep telling me my battery's low. Still put this on though, right? Yeah. Even though it's not doing anything, at least it keeps my hair looking nice. Or back, because again, I have bedhead. Now, hopefully this will be a conversation, because otherwise it would be quite boring. And sometimes I don't even know where to start. But in having discussions of this type, where people might be alleging one thing or another, where people might be alleging casual sexism, or people might be alleging intimidation or harassment, let me get a baseline. And here's the baseline. Just because someone alleges something, you should take it seriously, but I don't buy that believe all women crap. Nope. I believe in due process. I believe women lie just as much as men do, and that we're not saints that all of a sudden when we talk about one subject, we should just be believed without question. Obviously, there are different standards if you're talking with a friend. If there's a dear friend, you're probably going to believe your friend. But in general, you should listen to things, judge them on their merits, take them seriously, but we do not get into this really sick, twisted thing that's going on in the world today where if a woman alleges something, it's true. You ruin lives that way. And that is not at all what I am talking about. But we actually have the opposite problem in the party. Things get reported, things get mentioned, and they're just ignored. Just absolutely ignored. That's been my personal experience. And in talking with other women, it's been their experience. And of course, this doesn't just happen to women. That's, you know, I'm speaking for the vagina crowd because I got one, you know. I'm sure it happens in lots of different ways to men. However, again, I'm going to be speaking from my particular point of view. And I am going to give some concrete examples. And it's been a while. This is a show I probably should have done a long time ago. But I put it off. It's not really my favorite topic. I'm not looking for oh poor me attention, and I don't feel like oh poor me. I pretty much can handle myself, but there is a problem, and it is disturbing, and I'm going to give you some of my concrete examples. If anyone has anything to add in chat, I would love to hear them or love to interact with you. And I don't exactly know what all of the solutions are, but I can tell you what some of the solutions aren't, and I can give some suggestions. Now, the first one I'm going to give is quite clear cut. Hey, Daniel, how you doing? And hey, Dave. So, and some of these other examples aren't quite as clear cut. And when I say them to you, you might not agree with me. You might say, hey, you are I don't agree with you on that. I don't see it that way. I think you're overreacting. That's fine. Because none of this is really about whether any of the claims I'm making are true. More what I want to talk about is what happens when such claims are made. Because inevitably, some of these claims will be correct from somebody. And if we're not handling them at all, that's a problem. And if we're not handling them fairly to all parties concerned, that's a problem. So the first one that is very clear-cut, though without me giving details, I think some people had different visions in their mind, because I'm also using legal terminology, which might not be the same terminology that everyone out in the normie world who aren't involved with lawyers use. First, let's get some terminology out on the table. There are the legal terms of assault and a legal term battery. And those two don't necessarily mean the same thing. Battery is when there's actual physical contact, and assault is where there's threats and intimidation of physical contact, though not necessarily with physical contact. And that's why sometimes you'll hear in criminal law the phrases assault and battery. It was both a verbal and physical aggression type thing. That gets a bit weird in libertarian circles because our words violence. It gets to be a point where they are certainly the threat of violence, and the threat of violence is aggression. I think we can all agree upon that. And also using your words or your body or your actions in a way to physically intimidate somebody, I think we would also agree is aggression. So that's how I am using the word assault. Some people will hear the word assault and they're picturing somebody getting, knocked over the head, dragged behind an alley, and the shit beat out of them. That's not what I mean. So now with that terminology in mind, so you can now get a better picture when I say that I was assaulted at the 2016 National Convention. That doesn't mean that some guy dragged me out in the back and beat the crap out of me. But it does mean that I don't like using the word victim, subject perhaps is what I will use, of very obvious, pronounced physical intimidation. And I do think it probably crossed the line into battery, but very minor battery. But I just used the word assault to say what it definitely was. I do think it, when things are happening, sometimes your memory, you're thinking to yourself, this isn't happening. And, you weren't anticipating to have to capture every single detail. And so I'd like to give the details of this since people have continued to ask me, and now I'll be able to point to a video, because even though I've said it so many times, so many people still haven't heard it. First of all, now let me tell the story and then I'll do the first of all. This was in fact witnessed. In a weird way, it was witnessed by dozens of people, but they didn't see it. Isn't that, things can happen in front of us and we don't really realize what's going on because there's so much going on that the data, gets clustered or, it all just jumbles together. But it was specifically witnessed by one guy from Colorado by the name of Jeff Orrick, who happened to be sitting at a delegate table right in front of where this was going on. So he was like, holy shit, I can't believe this is happening right in front of me. And any of you, Jeff Orrick is such a baby doll. I adore him. He's been in the party a really, really long time. He's not the biggest, most buffest guy in the party, okay? But this guy was sitting here, Wayne wasn't around, seeing this happen and thinking, oh my God, I'm going to have to fly over the table after this guy that is physically threatening her, and I'm going to get killed. I think that's probably what was going on in his head, because the person who was interacting with me, he is a big guy. I would guess 250 pounds-ish, more. A good 6 feet. He was taller, bigger, menacing type of comportment. So how then did this happen? The 2016 convention was a blast. And we didn't get to have the experience of a presidential convention in 2020. So some of you guys listening to this who are newer to the party haven't got to experience this. You might not understand as I set the scene. But those of you who have been to presidential nominating conventions, you can. During the time when the balloting is happening and the nomination speeches are going on, a lot of people are on their feet conventioneering with signs for their preferred candidate. And a lot of you will remember me from the 2016 convention with my lightsaber and my radical caucus, thumbs up, thumbs down. Well, during the presidential conventioneering portion, I was walking around with a sign for Darryl Perry. And many, many people were walking around with signs, a lot of Austin Petersen signs, but most of the signs were for Gary Johnson. He had a lot of supporters there. He ended up getting our nomination. That's pretty obvious. And we were just kind of doing the racetrack, walking around. There was like this main center aisle down the middle where CNN had a big thing in the middle, kind of split the delegates in two. So in Colorado was, if you're looking at the stage, was on the right-hand side, just behind that middle divider. And then right in front of that middle divider was Tennessee. So we were walking like around up to the stage, back around, a big loop. And there was this guy. I don't know if he was with the Tennessee delegation. He was sitting there, but people were getting up and down and sitting all over the place. And in 2016, it was the first year in a long time where like we had full delegations everywhere that could be full. Some states don't take out-of-state delegates. Like whoever they bring to convention, that's it. But most states will take walk-ins. That's probably not the right word. Walk-ins. A lot of times people, they don't even know. They show up. They're looking for a delegate seat. People are scrambling to find them a delegate seat. They're not really vetted. Nobody knows who they are. So if this guy was sitting with the Tennessee delegation, it wasn't a Tennessee guy. There was a lot of carpet braggers brought in for this convention to get the nomination for Johnson Weld. My eyes were like really, really opened. And this is why I am so very adamant that states should not seat out-of-state delegates. There shouldn't be this, we have to have a full delegation of all costs. Why? Wouldn't you rather have people that you knew and were vetted and that were going to represent your state properly than having this weird dubious honor of, we filled our delegation with like strangers we don't even know? Because like this guy I'd never seen before or after. He was one of the carpetbaggers brought in. Is that really a good thing? Anyway, so he was carrying a Gary Johnson sign. I'm not putting his bad behavior on Gary Johnson, okay? He's just, sometimes you never know who you're bringing in as a supporter. So he was carrying a Gary Johnson sign, and I just must have annoyed the fuck out of him because he decided I was going to be his target. So everywhere I walked, I noticed there's this big guy following me everywhere. And as a woman, other women will be like, when your spidey sense starts going and you're like, looking behind you like, who is this guy? And he just kept getting closer. And we were walking, and the distance between us that he maintained just kept getting closer and closer and closer until he was like right up in my personal space as we're walking. Okay. And but it was chaotic. There were people all around us, but I might as well have been alone. And he's right up. And if anyone were paying attention, they would hear me continually say, because I get really, really calm when I feel threatened. And I was like, you're in my personal space. You're making me very uncomfortable. Please back off. I was just saying that over and over and over again. As I was calmly walking, I just got calmer. Please back away. You're making me very, very uncomfortable. Please back away. You know, over and over. Okay? So we make another circuit around the, I want to call it like the racetrack. But so we're heading back around to be in front of Colorado. And this guy was so close to me now, up like against me almost. I felt like I couldn't get away from him. And there was a chair like right sitting in front of the table of the Colorado delegation. In order to get away from this guy, I climbed up on that chair just so I could just feel like I could get some space between us. And he's right there, and he comes in front of the chair with his sign, because this now made me taller, and like just put it like right in my face, and it made contact, I believe. But again, this is happening. I'm like, I can't believe this is happening, and all these people are around, and they don't hear me. Like, do you not hear me saying to this guy, get the fuck away from me, basically? But right when I climbed up on that chair, and he's right in front of, you know, he's right there sticking his sign on my face, just being very physically, obviously, just using his body to be physically intimidating. He never said a word. You don't have to intimidate somebody. So that chair was right in front of poor Jeff Orrick, who's sitting there going, "Ooh, this is happening in front of me. I'm going to have to defend her," type of thing. And then I don't know if there was an announcement from the stage or whatever happened, but like the tension was broken. And everyone like disbanded. And I was like, whew. I immediately went over and reported what happened to Nathan Graybow. And I can't remember who else was there, who was like a field organizer for Gary Johnson. I figured that was the best people to tell. This guy was walking with a Gary Johnson sign. I was able to point him out. And the answer I got was, we don't know who that is. He's not one of ours. I'm like, well, he's carrying one of your signs, but I understand, you know, you can't control who's carrying your signs. And that was it. There wasn't any, oh, wow, yeah, he's not one of ours, but let me try to get you somebody who can assist you. It was just basically like, go away, you're bothering me, he's not one of ours. And I was kind of just like, being brushed off like that, like, made me feel small and stupid. And like, am I wrong? Like, am I making a big deal out of something? Should I not be complaining about this? Like, no one else is concerned. I didn't realize at that time that Jeff Orrick, like, saw everything and took it the exact same way I did, you know? So I was just like, okay. And I just left it alone from there. Though afterwards, I did get on Facebook and talk about it. But that kind of was like the extent of that. And the National Party was made aware that that happened because I asked for copies of the videotape that was made so that I could get a screenshot and identify this guy. But despite me asking for these videos, staff, like minor staff, when I say minor staff, it wasn't like the executive director. Crap, who was the executive director at that time? I think it was Wes, but he isn't who I dealt with. It was like Lauren or some sympathetic women who tried to help me. Like, was it Elizabeth Brierley sent me all the photographs that were taken. Couldn't find him. And then I was told our videos were lost. Or whoever took them, like, got mad at the party and never gave the videos to the party. I still, to this day, have never been able to review tapes. This happened, like, right in that center area. Like, I'd be surprised if the incident itself isn't on tape. But if that whole rallying, you'll see the way this dude's following me, if we ever had the tape. But I've never yet been able to see the tape. Okay. But to this day, the National Party itself, because I wasn't on the LNC at that time. I did get elected at that convention, but I didn't officially take my seat. And no one really knew who I was. I was still brand new. The National Party to this day has never officially acknowledged that I've made this complaint. That nobody ever asked me for my rent and account. There's no record of it anywhere as a complaint being made. And I think that sucks. And in 2018, I know they were vaguely at least aware of it. Do you think there was any kind of enhanced security? Like, the next person that feels intimidated and goes and complains, there should be protocol. Like, obviously, I'm not blaming Nathan or the Gary Johnson crew. They obviously didn't know what to do. Nobody knew what to do if something like this would happen. There needs to be procedures in place. We need to have security. Because you want to know what's going to happen if this happens to someone else and they get hurt? A lawyer's going to find my ass and say, you were complaining about this how many years ago and the National Party didn't do anything? Where our asses are going to get sued. That's why I keep talking about it. Because we need to fix this. It isn't to dwell on something that happened. It's to keep it from happening again. And we still, to this day, don't have any kind of security protocol in place. Emotions get hot at conventions. Libertarians tend to drink. We need to have protocols in place to handle this. I wonder how many other people this may have happened to that don't ever come back. Now, this particular situation, I think, is something that women are more vulnerable to because, generally speaking, women are smaller than men and can be physically intimidated by men. It's not always true. There are bigger women who could probably intimidate a few men, but that's the general rule. And this was a big boy. This was a bouncer material, that was following me around. I think there needs to be something done. And at this point, I'd like it just to be officially acknowledged by a party chair. The last party chair didn't, and this party chair knows that I've been complaining about it and hasn't. And that sucks. Now, let me give you a few more examples. That one to me is pretty clear cut. Like, that's not even a questionable, and there's a witness. Some of these other ones of my own experience, well, I'm going to give you another pretty clear cut one too, but some of the other ones are more subjective. I could be wrong. I could be exaggerating. I could be overly sensitive. That's not really the point, though, is it? The point is if the complaints are made, they need to be dealt with. And somebody asked, didn't the chairman set up a task force for this issue? We're going to get into that. Yes, kind of. For this issue, generally, but not this issue specifically. The task force was set up, and I've seen no reports out of it. The task force was set up because of very inappropriate comments that were made to Chrissy Witchers. And I am so glad a task force was set up, but that was set up, what? It's been now what? We haven't heard anything from it. I don't know if Chrissy's heard further from it. I know that I've been talking about these issues for a while. The task force has never talked to me, and I've tried to talk to the task force. And after a couple attempts, I'm like, I shouldn't have to chase them down. They should be they should be making a bigger effort to talk to me. I made an effort. I made a couple contacts, and no, the connection was never made. So yes, he did set up a task force for it, but a task force is not the same as we know this incident. The task force is to put guidelines to keep things from happening in the future. And that, again, it was the party chair of Chrissy Witcher's party, and he has since resigned, telling her if she didn't dress in a certain way, perhaps people wouldn't say she looked like a prostitute or something along those lines. I can't speak for Chrissy, but he was pressured to resign. And that's wonderful. But there should have been something out right away from that task force. I mean, that was shitty. But that's still not an official acknowledgement or report of an actual incident, of an actual potential battery and a definite assault that happened at the 2016 convention. Nobody's ever spoken to me officially. Okay. Second thing, now to not make the men feel like I'm picking on them. I've been the subject of sexual harassment for, it's over 3 years, I think now, from a woman. Everyone knows about it. Everyone has witnessed it. Party's done nothing. Like, what can they do? I don't know. But the fact is, it shouldn't be tolerated within our community that there's a woman who follows me around talking about my tits more than my husband does. And it's not just on social media. I got to a point where I felt like I couldn't go and comment anywhere where I couldn't block people. Like, I used to be a guest editor at IPR. I stopped commenting there because every time I commented there, she would show up with the equivalent of heckling "show me your tits" from the audience. It just got to be the point where that's humiliating. I didn't want to be having to have a serious conversation and have this come up each time. Everyone knows who I'm talking about. She's still doing it. And on party official social media accounts, because again, what can the party do about someone from IPR? You know, it gets real tricky as to what we actually can do, right? But she was also commenting on the national social media page. And she didn't cross the line there, commenting about my body. But she did it everywhere else and people were aware of it. But because of the technicality, she didn't do it there. They thought it was just fine for her to be able to comment on my post, despite the fact that this woman was sexually harassing me elsewhere. And then she started doxing me. And the admins of the national page started getting into, and this included our former chair, started getting into the technicalities of what doxing is. No. Doxing somebody is revealing personal details that are irrelevant to discussion, that are obviously unwanted and took some work for you to find. It isn't, if they were able to find it in public records, it's not doxing. Almost anything is public nowadays. That doesn't mean it's public, if you know what I mean. Just because someone could dig up something, that's still doxing. They don't have to hire a private investigator and break into Watergate to find things for it to be called doxing. So on the national page, this woman started talking about my ex-husband and my divorce from years ago, a divorce from which I was the victim of domestic violence, of which my ex is a police officer. Like, there was scary, scary shit that went on. And nope, nothing was done about that. That was fine. I just had to suck it up, Buttercup. That ain't right. You know, that definitely is not right. And everyone knew what she was doing elsewhere. But nothing. Again, that's trickier. What do you do? Ignoring, I know one thing you don't do is nothing. Or if you do nothing, you at least speak to the person who's the victim of it and explain why, and maybe solicit their input, or maybe, partner with them in some way. I blocked her. That's all I could do. But even if you block someone, You still know what's going on because you're in a conversation and all of a sudden the people around you on social media are speaking to someone you can't see, and you can tell the subject is your freaking tits. That one, again, fairly clear. Less clear as to what we could do about it. Next one. An LNC meeting. Again, this is subjective. This is subjective. But when the complaint is made, the issue should be dealt with. And when I say dealt with, I don't mean demonizing the men. Because let me tell you my view on sexism in the LP. Most of it I don't think is intentional. Most of it I think is what I call at least soft sexism. And most times when it's brought to someone's attention, let's just say in this case a man, because it could be a woman as well, the man is usually mortified and goes, oh my God, I didn't realize that's how it would be taken. Most of it's not malicious. What happened to Chrissy Witchers? That's different. But the example I'm going to bring up now, women will relate to, because I think sometimes we face the soft sexism. And the men who are making the comments don't have our life experiences to realize how it would be taken on our end. So there was an LNC meeting, and I'm gonna relate this as closely as I can. My recollection could be a little flawed. This was years ago, and obviously, when something rubs you the wrong way, your mind can play tricks on you, and sometimes remember it even worse than it was. So I don't have the recording in front of me, but this is going to be very close. And Jean Trosper, it is who you are thinking of. So I was at an LNC meeting and running for a seat on the National Platform Committee. And I was tied with a male LNC member. And we were tied for like 6 rounds. And it was nutty. Both of us were from states that got national. To me, this is like over and done with. I'm trying not to mention names because I'm not trying to shame people. I'm trying to talk about incidents. Both of us were from states that would get National Platform Committee seats as well, that the states hadn't made their appointments yet. So I think we're on our 6th round of tie. And we weren't breaking the tie. It ended up getting broken by a coin toss. But at some point, the other LNC member, and my husband was state chair of Colorado at that time. And he's state chair again. But he had said to the LNC something to the effect of, if you don't elect her to the LNC list, her husband will just give her the Colorado seat. And the way I heard it was, the little lady, the husband will just give it to her. And it was just so demeaning. He didn't mean it that way. But that's the way it came up. My marriage should haven't been any part of that at all. Like, because, and now you all are going to end up knowing who I'm talking about. We've since settled it because I've got to bring in another dynamic here as to why this was so inappropriate. The person who happened to say that's wife was on the LNC and voting. And I didn't turn around and go, well, your wife's just going to give you your seat, right? All of it was just so inappropriate. And if I were a man, I doubt the comment would have been said, well, his wife will just give him the state seat. And at that time, my jaw dropped. Like everyone on the LNC saw, my jaw dropped. And I looked at Nick and I'm like, can I respond to that? Like everyone could tell I was mortified. But nobody picked up on it. And when I did complain later, I was just ridiculed. When in fact, Nick should have taken both of us aside and handled it after the meeting in some way or another. And I didn't want that person to get in trouble because I don't think they meant it that way. But it's the way I took it, and resolution needed to be had. And so in one way or another. I don't think there were mean intentions. But the fact is it happened, and this happens all the time. There are comments like that all the time. That's one where potentially we can disagree. But I'm just telling to you from my perspective. Now I'm going to give you one last example from my perspective, and this is more recent. And again, I'm going to be very, very vague because the names, I'm protecting certain names, and it's not important. And this is a more current situation, which is another reason why I'm not going to name names, because the person that I might feel this about is innocent until proven guilty. My feelings don't make somebody guilty of something. It's not to say my feelings aren't real, but they're just that. They're my subjective feelings. And no one's member rights or reputation or anything else should be negatively impacted by my subjective feelings. That person has rights that cannot be abridged in that way. However, there's a current situation where there is another party member that, for my own reasons that I did detail, I feel very intimidated by, uncomfortable by, to the point where I let people around me know I don't ever leave me in a situation where I'm going to be alone in a room with this person, which has happened before. And I communicated this, that the possibility of interactions that might be, that I'm being intentionally very vague, that at some upcoming meetings or upcoming events, the likelihood of interactions between myself and this person are nearly certain. So I communicated my concerns to the party chair and other people, asking for support in what do I do if I feel like something's wrong here? Like, who do I go to? What are my options? At no time did I suggest that this other person's rights should be curtailed just because I have feels. But what I said should have been taken seriously. And can I tell you that I've been completely ignored? The party chair has completely ignored these concerns. Absolutely ignored them. And that's not right. That's just absolutely not right. Somebody expresses those kinds of concerns, that they are in physical fear. You address them. Even if you think they're wrong, that's not the point. Even if you think they're a little batty, that's not the point. Particularly when all they're asking for is what's the recourse? What should I do if I feel threatened? Nothing. Ignored. I don't care if there's a fucking task force. I said it to you. You need to deal with it. Now let me, though, step back. After the second time I mentioned it, one person in the discussion did take me seriously and did talk to me about it and assured me that I could go to them for help, and that was Ken Moman. So far, out of the whole National Party, out of all these years, the only person that has ever acknowledged or taken such concerns seriously is Ken Moman. No party chair has. And I'm not saying this for political reasons. I'm not saying this to try to... I'm just saying this is a matter of what's right. And this is recent. And I've mentioned this multiple times, and I've been ignored by the chair. And he's not the first one. I was ignored by the last chair. Who else has been ignored? Who's being ignored by their party chairs? Never mind the national chair. And me saying all this crap, a lot of this stuff publicly, the fact that the task force hasn't gone out of its way to talk to me. We've got a problem in this party. I'm not the only woman who's saying things like this. I just happen to have a platform. The state chair of Michigan was run out of the party due to feeling threatened and being stalked. How many more? How many women just leave and don't say anything, or men? Because again, from what I know, the lady who's obsessed with my tits has harassed many, many men over the years too. Like, she's an equal opportunity harasser. And it's in those circumstances, it's worse for men. How humiliating must it be for a man to come and have to admit, you know, this woman is like really, really harassing me. You know, it's a double standard there that works against men. I can't imagine being a man having to like try to get recourse for that. I think they'd be laughed at. And that's not right either. And I don't know the unique problems that men may face in this. Like, I only know the ones that myself and some female friends have talked about. But I don't want to pretend like this only goes one way. And I think the way culture is handling these issues is wrong. You know, the whole believe women thing, ruining the lives of men, that a mere accusation is enough. That's wrong. But the way we're handling it is wrong too. And it certainly is not being handled like the party of principle. What to do, I'm not sure. But I can tell you what we're doing right now, nothing isn't helping. And I know we face the danger of, again, going too much like the culture and making, you know, people guilty simply upon someone's say. And that's not right either. You can't have that. And you also can't be censoring people's speech because some people's feelings might be hurt. I mean, there's got to be like guidelines in place, but there really isn't anything. And some of the things I've pointed out are just really, really clear. So what to do, I don't know. But I did want to bring awareness to this. Because, I'm sorry, the fact that I've expressed that I'm in fear of encounters at future meetings and the party chair has ignored me is unacceptable. The fact that I expressed that I was assaulted at the 2016 convention and the party chair at that time did nothing to acknowledge it is unacceptable. And I do think it should be acknowledged this term, but really, it does really more so belong in the last term. So this is an issue we're going to have a reckoning with one day. And it'd be better that we not. And I've seen nothing out of this committee. I was really happy when the committee was formed because I thought, good. I thought I'd have been interviewed somewhat quickly, but no. So, yeah, there's some comments I'm going to put up. And let's see. Okay, let's put up here's, for some reason, comments from groups, the name doesn't show up, so I apologize. It'll just say Facebook user. It says, a serious issue if the task force and the chairman has been informed, stuff like this can't be ignored. And they have been. I would say we should act like we should believe the victim or purported victim. I don't like, using the word victim assumes something's been done wrong. The complainant might be the better term in terms of how we deal with an issue, but obviously due process. Exactly. I absolutely agree with you. And if all someone is asking is, what can I do if I feel like I'm in fear? We should have processes in place for public meetings where it's politics and people can get weird. You know, people can get weird, and we need to be prepared for that. So I absolutely agree with you. And it is the fact that I've been ignored that was the last straw for me. Because honestly, I feel like I could be very uncharitable here. I feel like part of the reason I've been ignored is because I'm not, how do I put this? I'm not best friends with the party chair right now, because on the LNC, I tend to be a pain in the ass, and sometimes I'm not the most popular person. And I feel like if I were friends, then I wouldn't be ignored. And I could be wrong about that. Because during the time of the 2016 convention, I was very, very close with Nick, and I was ignored then. So maybe I'm wrong. But the fact is, for whatever reason, it hasn't been acknowledged. And Ken Mullman was copied on all these conversations. That's how he got involved and acknowledged it. So he knows damn well I've been ignored. So that's where we're at. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Unless there's further comments, because again, I love the discussion. My goal in bringing this out isn't to harm the party, obviously, because I'm asking for it to be fixed, and I really didn't want to make this, but there comes a time where you gotta listen, I don't shut up about much. Why would I shut up about this until it gets fixed, right? Why be reticent on this? Because it's embarrassing. You know, it's embarrassing. I'm a strong woman. You'd like to think, well, you know, like water off a duck, right? Well, yeah and no. The next person this happens to might not be quite as strong. And I think I have a duty as a party leader to not be silent about it, and to demand that state chairs, well, I can give you another example, actually, of state chair, because I don't want to seem like all I'm doing is ragging on the national chair. The thing is, my involvement's mostly national. But there was an act of intimidation at the 2019 LPCO convention that I felt the newly elected chair of LPCO didn't handle properly. It was a very contentious convention, and this was ironically, it was witnessed by Chrissy Witchers, where there was this political performance by a very obnoxious individual there, who, as he was coming down down this aisle from after giving a debate in which my husband was one of the debate participants, he comes in front of me and it's all like bows up in my face and like sticks his finger like right in my face to try to intimidate me. Now, was I intimidated? No. Because like in a non-nap world, if I were a violent person and not a pacifist, I could kick his ass if I wanted to. I wasn't intimidated. But was the intent to intimidate me? Yes, it was. And I complained about it. And it was downplayed. And there was no statement this convention. See, in my mind, at any convention, if there was a complaint at the prior convention of some form of physical intimidation, to me, then, there either needs to be a mention of that at the beginning of each convention, reminding people, you know, that we get passionate, but hey, there are lines you don't cross. or in our standing rules or in something. But just like with national, with no security in place, no protocols, the same thing with Colorado. And this same individual was at this convention trying to make an ass out of himself. This year, though, nobody took his antics seriously, so he didn't have a chance to intimidate anyone. But when you know an incident happened at the last convention, proactively at the next one, it should be dealt with. There should be an announcement at the beginning. Listen, when you're on the mic, be verbally polite to people, but also don't do anything which might be interpreted by another person as an act of physical intimidation. I understand we get passionate, but that's not going to be allowed. Anyone here, if you feel like that has happened to you, the sergeant at arms is over there. That is the person you would go to speak to handle it. So that's all. That's really some things like that, at least. If not for our principle, at least to protect our asses from being sued. I tend to think on the legal side. And I would agree with you, Elastic Giraffe. Yes, this individual did indeed make a royal ass out of himself. The unifying moment of this convention was when he got booed. But, you know. So, all right, I think I probably could come up with more if I sat. I don't hold on to these things, but it is bothering me that we don't have systems in place. And maybe that's all we can do is have systems in place. And interestingly, in going through old bylaws, and I'm not sure I would want to reinstate this, but I'm going to relate something now that has nothing to do with this subject, but has to do with bad behavior, but not of this kind. Some of you may recall Joe Burns was asking Nick how we could revoke the lifetime membership of this guy in Virginia who apparently Nathan Larson, who went nutso and advocates all kinds of disgusting things like pedophilia. And there really is no procedure in place in the party to, quote unquote, throw someone out. And I actually think that's a good idea because to not be able to, because we libertarians can get really weird and we could spend our whole time having Salem witch trials as to who's not a real libertarian to be throwing people out. But in the past, and I just learned this, and I don't know it was ever been used, the National Judicial Committee used to hear things like this. And does there need to be some kind of disciplinary board? I don't know. I have a feeling that could be a be careful what you wish for type thing. I know we did have this in place, and I don't know why we don't anymore. So, I'm just throwing that out there. I know on the state level, we have a judicial committee that deals with state disciplinary items. But nationally, that just seems like a loaded gun. So, again, a lot of questions raised, a lot of facts just brought forward, and asking for all of us to come up with solutions. I'm not pretending to have them all, but I do think it's a discussion that needs to be had. And I do hope after this video that the task force goes out of its way to talk to me. I shouldn't have to chase them. And that the party chair step up to the plate and not ignore, even if he thinks I'm being absolutely silly, not ignore my concerns. And when all I'm asking for is, what do I do? What are the protocols if I feel threatened? To answer my question and not ignore it. But thank you, Ken Mollman, for stepping up to the plate and being a leader. You're the only one. Hats off to you. Okay, everyone. Oh, there's a couple questions. No, we don't have any. Well, the LNC can censure somebody, but what does that do, really? And part of the problem with censure is unless it's done like a formal disciplinary trial, it really does run the risk of ruining reputations of people who maybe didn't do anything and there's just somebody with a grudge. I don't know. I'm just so uncomfortable with all of that. I don't know. And I say state parties should be able to remove members, but that's it, and have national follow the state's example. The Nazi pedophile guy, and that is Nathan Larson, is a good example of why we should be able to boot people, and I'm glad Virginia booted him. Me as well. I'm not, when it gets to the national level, because we're so far removed, to me, it's almost like a localism issue, like Virginia knows best because he's a Virginia member. I'm very, very, very hesitant to say that national membership should be able to be revoked. I think that would be a tiger we'd be very regretful we let out of the cage. The delegates at convention could always do that. And so far they've declined. But it could be perhaps because they didn't really understand, and it was really kind of just like a pissing match between Joe Burns and Nick. But that is something the delegates at a national convention could do. I do think it's probably it handled on the state level is the best way. And I can tell you in Colorado, we have no way to ever remove anyone from the party in Colorado. Part of that is because our party membership is based upon, not that we've ever had a situation where I think anyone should be removed, don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying, theoretically, our party membership, we don't have dues or anything like that. It's just if you're a registered libertarian, you're a party member. And we can't revoke somebody's registration, so that makes it even more difficult. And I love what Gene said here. Yeah, if nothing can be done, may as well hang a banner at convention saying, "Welcome to the Thunderdome." I know that's my quandary. And because, that talk I do, well, a lot of you haven't, there's a talk on my channel that I did in Kansas. You might want to watch it. And I start the talk by going, "Welcome to Thunderdome, bitches," because isn't that what it's like? Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for hearing me out. It's not really a pleasant discussion, but I do think it needed to be had and probably needs to continue. Be more than glad to talk with other people, because there were even more egregious examples, but I didn't want to speak for those women. I only really wanted to talk about my own because I just feel weird, telling stories that aren't mine, that aren't mine to tell. Okay. And thank you. Val asked everyone to check that out. Thank you. It's an important one, I think. And it's kind of different from what I normally say. People are used to me as the Spitfire talking about barbed dildos and not necessarily talking about how libertarian dystopia is possible. And we need to be very, very cautious of that. All right. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, and I will see you soon. With love. Bye-bye.
You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business, not because they want to